Hello everybody, and welcome to your how-to video on how to fill out a recurring practice request. As you can see here, this is your home page, and if you're having trouble logging in or getting to this home page, we do have a how-to video on how to get to this point and how to log in to fill out all of your forms. So just keeping that in mind if you're having trouble, but for this example, we'll move on to our forms section of our IMLeagues account. And after we click on that, we'll scroll to the recurring practice request form. And from here, this is where you're going to be filling out your practice request. As you can see from the first section there that we have, the semester, do keep in mind that you're going to be filling out a practice request form for the entire fall semester before our deadline that we have set. So if you're a club that maybe practices outside for the time that it's nice outside, the weather's good, until it gets too cold, you'll be filling out for both that part of practices, and then if you move indoors, you'll be filling that out as well, all before the deadline that we have set. So just keeping that in mind, but we'll move through an example of having a club do that process so you have an idea of what you need to do. So for the next part that we have here, the preference, first or second, pretty self-explanatory, but if you have, maybe you want to practice on Sunday, that is the day that you do want to practice, but you can be flexible on the time. You could put in a first preference of Sunday from one time to another, and then another for your second preference on a Sunday for a different time, but we'll talk about that as we get down to that form. So we do have our first preference selected. Next, we'll be filling out what day we would like to be practicing on. So we do know that a lot of clubs practice on multiple days during the week. That's totally okay. We'll show you how to fill out a request for each one of those days. But we're going to be starting on our first request here for Monday. And after that, we'll be selecting the facility. So you'll see all of the facilities that we currently schedule under this drop-down menu. If you do not see your facility, you will click Other, and then fill that section out on the bottom. So we do have some of our equestrian clubs, clubs that do practice off campus. We just need to make sure that we fill that out in that section, and please indicate what the title of the facility is that you're practicing. But for this example, we'll be using Bigler as our facility request. The next section here, we have room, court / field space, what surface that y'all are requesting to practice on. So if you think about your basketball clubs, if y'all want to practice on 2 courts, if you're volleyball and you want to practice on 2 courts as well, or if you're in the white building and you prefer to practice in room or the gym 126, whatever the case may be, this is where you're going to be filling out the specifics of where in the facility you would like to practice. But for Bigler, we know that that's the grass field, and so that's what we'll put in that part of the section. The next part that we have here, pretty self-explanatory, the start time. So we're going to be starting at 6 p.m. and ending at 8 p.m. Do keep in mind that the drop down automatically defaults to a.m. I don't know how many of y'all want to practice at 6 a.m., but just keeping that in mind as you're filling that part out. The next one that we have here is the start date. This is absolutely crucial for us in scheduling our staff to come and check on clubs, especially for the clubs that have lifeguards. Since the club is paying for the lifeguards, we want to make sure that we're giving them the appropriate schedule so that they can schedule their staff, especially since different facilities schedule their staff 1 to 2 to 3 weeks in advance for our club practices. So be very mindful of what you're putting as the start date. So if you do start on a Monday, you've selected Monday, make sure that this request is reflecting that. So our start date will be the 27th, keeping in mind we do have our activation week, that first week of classes. So unless you get prior approval, the earliest you can practice, as long as you're active, is going to be the 27th of August. And then the same thing for the end date. Make sure you select the Monday of when you would like to stop practice. Like I said earlier, this example is going to be a club that's going to be moving indoors as soon as the weather gets poor outside. We don't expect you to know the exact date of what that's going to be, but please give it the best ballpark that you have, so we have a general idea of when you plan on moving in that section of the form. in the additional information and details, feel free to add any information that could be helpful for us so that we can eliminate going back and forth with y'all on this form. So as you can see here, we're practicing up until the weather gets cold, and then we'll move indoors, and then we'll see what the secondary request is for our indoor facility. So if you have any comments like that, or maybe you're a club that practices indoors whenever the weather is poor outdoors, whatever the case may be, what you think would be important for us to know, please put that in this area. So after you filled out all the sections, please go through and make sure that everything is correct. And make sure you make note of what day you're filling out for when you go back in. If you're a club that practices multiple days, you're able to know, okay, we've already done Monday, we need to move on to our next day, and we'll show you how to fill out that request. Especially look at the start and end date. Like I said, we do schedule staff, and we do not want staff showing up for a club practice when the club is not practicing, and then they will be charged for that fee and maybe face some disciplinary sanctions. So just keeping that in mind. After you've done that, you'll submit form review. For this example, we'll be using Men's Ultimate. You'll see at the top right we have success for that Monday practice. Okay, great. So we have our first practice down. We need to fill out our practice request for Wednesday. What you'll do is you'll notice that the reoccurring practice form is not on one of these other forms along with it where it was when you first filled it out. So what you'll need to do is you can click on the hyperlink, or you can move over to the options, and you'll be making a new copy. So that's where it is on the options page. But if you go back and look at the hyperlink that you had, Michael will go back at, there he goes, he's got it. You can also click on the hyperlink of the form, and it'll take you here, and you'll go to the top right and see start or make a new copy. So you can click on that as well. This is going to be for your second day. Do keep in mind that it's going to keep all the information that you had on the first request, which sometimes is kind of nice if you're a club that practices on the same time, the same place, things along those lines. But do keep in mind that it transfers all the information because it is a copy. So for this example, this will be our second preference for Monday at Bigler. We're a little bit flexible with the time, so we're okay with going from 7 to 9 p.m. On that Monday. So like I said, pretty easy if it's all the same, and then as long as you have that second preference, you could submit for review, and it will be the same process of having that success button show up. You'll scroll down and click on that form again to fill out your next day, and then you'll hit make a new copy, and here we go. So now we'll move on. Let's say on Mondays we are expecting the weather to get poor towards the end of November, but after November we would like to move into the multi-sport facility. So we can start with the start date of what we last ended on, and then the end of classes, which I'm not entirely sure if that's the end of classes, but we'll use it for this example, and then we'll adjust the facility. So we had it outside up until that time. Now we would like to move indoor to multi-sport to practice and conclude practice for the semester, changing the appropriate information since, like I said, it is a copy. So the multi-sport, as most of you may know, is a turf field that you can utilize. So putting half of the turf field is great. If you're unsure of how much space you can get, you can just put turf field and we'll work with you on that. Additionally, you want to make sure you want to edit the start and end date. And just make sure you do that. Michael's already done that for us. And then at the bottom of it, you do have that additional information details comment section that if you need to fill out any information, like I said, that could be helpful for us. We have this section in here to avoid going back and forth with you and communicating with you. We want to make sure that we get these requests in as quickly as possible and approved as soon as possible. So if you do have information you think will be helpful, that will help us out a great deal. So this is to explain why we're moving into multi-sport at the end of the semester. So like I said in the beginning, make sure you go through all the information, it's correct. The drop-down menus are what you want it to be. The AM and PMs are adjusted to what they need to be. The facility space, start and end date, all of those are extremely important because what we don't want is duplicates to be submitted and we're unsure of which one is the one that we need to review. So same process, submit for review, and it'll pop up as a success button. And if you would like to submit it for a different day, pretty self-explanatory. Just make sure you adjust the day and the date of when that day will occur. So obviously a Monday won't be the same start date as a Tuesday. So keeping that in mind, these are where the forms will be when you need to review them. Once they are approved, the status will change on our end. It might look a little bit different since we do have admin access on our page currently, but it will be listed as approved. If you do need to adjust any of the information in the meantime, you may hit the edit button, the option button, and edit it. I would also follow up with us with an email to ensure that you did make an edit on your practice request. Just make sure you hit that blue button at the top to make the adjustments. So we're going to switch it over to Tuesday. We're going to say the same time, but we're going to adjust the date to a Tuesday, obviously, which will be a day after. So making those adjustments is pretty easy, but do let us know if you do, just in case we've already submitted the request or we've already approved that request. Also note that the deadlines of these forms are firm, and you cannot adjust the practices in the middle of the semester or anything like that. Same thing as far as submitting it for review. You'll submit it as your club and have that success button in the top right corner. So that's how you fill out the practice request form.